Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for our June edition of Evolve in the Know webinars, which is brought to you by Max. My name is Brad Smith, and I'm the Marketing Communications Manager for the RSL and Services Clubs Association. Today's webinar, What is your difference in your local market, is an interesting and important one for clubs, as I'm sure you are all finding it to be a very competitive environment at the moment. To help us tackle this topic today, we have 4 key panelists, which I'll introduce to you in a minute. But before I do, I want to encourage everyone joining us that you can ask questions at any point at the bottom of your screen, and I'll get our panelists to answer them when we can. Also, I want to remind everyone that today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available through our EDM tomorrow morning on our website and YouTube channel. So please pass this on to other departments in your club to watch at their earliest convenience. To start us off, I'd like to welcome our first presenter, who is the CEO of Shoalhaven Next Services Group, Bernie Brown. Welcome, Bernie.
Yeah, morning, Brad. How's it going? Afternoon, sorry. Losing track of the time.
Welcome, mate. If you'd like to load up your presentation and start us off.
Yep, excellent. Yeah, cheers, Brad, and welcome to everyone and to the panelists as well. Really appreciate the opportunity to come on board today to discuss what we've been up to and the opportunities that we've seen present themselves and move into new markets. So if you're not aware, late last year we opened a new precinct in the club called the Growers Shoalhaven. It's a contemporary food and beverage outlet. You can see behind me as well. There's a great image that I was able to put as a backdrop, which is fantastic. And yeah, it's really a celebration of everything local, produce, local beers and wines, and local people as well. There's a lot of thought that went into the concept. It didn't just happen overnight. And I guess where that ties into well to the discussion today is that we identified through looking at our membership demographic and database that we're missing out on a pretty large chunk of the local market share in the female 30-year-old market. So we did some work around that with focus groups and really looked at an exciting concept that would attract that cohort to the club, and we came up with the Growers. The board took the leap of faith May last year, so right in the midst of lockdown, to take the risk and construct this precinct. And in the end, the way things evolved with the opening and around this time last year, and the increased domestic tourism market, that we were able to open at a significant time of popularity for the South Coast area. So that really played very luckily and very well into our hands. We found that it has definitely hit that demographic, and the 30-year-old female cohort are thoroughly enjoying the facility. We've probably turned over close to 47,000 covers now since opening late November, and over 1.5 million in additional food and beverage turnover. Which is fantastic. And as I said, from the research we've conducted, with only sort of 6 months worth of data, we've seen that predominantly we're hitting that target demographic. So that's been fantastic. So I'll put a couple of slides up sort of as I go. You can have a look through. So the concept arrived at, looking at what we could do on site with some beautiful areas around the golf course that we felt were being underutilised as well. Some beautiful grassed areas, and there was some golf cart storage areas and things like that we've been able to convert into revenue generating part of the club. So it's fantastic to see. We've got some great garden beds that are producing tomatoes, herbs, some seasonal veggies as well, flowers that we use to garnish in the cocktails, and of course on the plates as well, and some kids play areas that we'd never really had before, and it was all part of our strategy in moving forward to accommodate that. I guess what the surprising thing for us has been is the unexpected demographics that are frequenting this new establishment, and we've found that cashed up retirees or discerning retirees are really enjoying the concept as well. So we're getting that real intergenerational mix. And as most people are aware, there's been a very strong movement from the city into the regional areas, people looking to cash in, given it's a really good sort of market for sellers at the moment, and looking to relocate into the Illawarra, Shoalhaven regions. So these people are traditionally coming down with a few dollars and a good discretional expenditure, and we're finding that it's been really good for our midweek lunches and midweek evenings. This cohort is topping up those areas for us, away from our traditional sort of weekend traffic. So I guess I could cast way back to say 3.5 years ago, and it ties in really well with the RSL and services clubs, and I'll give Gary a wrap. The conference in Adelaide, there was a Fit for 2020 program, and our board adopted all of those philosophies and felt that was a fantastic conference. Took a lot away from it, and we began the planning process with Pete McLean and the team from Tully Hurd, basically in the foyer of the hotel over a beer and talking about the spaces. So it really sparked our interest in what we could do to be fit for 2020, and how we could really look at our membership demographic and cater more to the growing needs of our local population. We set about formulating that into our strategic plan, and also backing it with some really strong research around the project as well. And as I said, fast forward to last year, we pressed the go button, and we haven't looked back. I guess some of the challenges that we faced with opening the new precinct towards the back end of last year was that JobKeeper was very much alive and well through that period, and being a beautiful part of the New South Wales coastline, it's very tempting for people to spend the summer period receiving government subsidies and supplements perhaps, and weighing that up against a casual job perhaps may have been something that people were considering. So it was quite tricky recruiting over that period of time, and we were lucky to snare head chef with the calibre of Patrick Haney, who come to us from Portland in the US. Has done a lot of work across the city in Circular Quay and other various venues, and really started out quite early in the piece, meeting with local producers, whether it be farmers to oyster growers at Greenville Point just down the road. So he came on about 3 months prior to opening, mainly to recruit the team, but also to get those local connections going. And we're very proud that at the time of COVID, that we were able to create around 50 positions in the local area, and connect with those local suppliers and producers. And 1.5 million in turnover, a lot of that comes from those local farms, local wineries, local brewers. So it's been really pleasing to be able to put back into the community in that regard as well. I guess another interesting the way we approached this strategy was because we were aiming at a traditional non-club market, being the 30-year-old females. We were very conscious about branding the venue away from our traditional club brand. While we had gone through a group rebrand and venue rebrand, which modernised the look and feel, it was still important for us to differentiate the growers to the club brand. And I guess it's no disrespect to the club brand, but unfortunately there can be that stigma in the community and certain demographics that clubs can be seen as old, a bit tired, probably not female friendly, and we're very conscious of that. We had a very strong pre-launch marketing campaign, and it paid dividends branding away from the club. So in the early stages and pre-launch, we didn't even have a link to the growers available from our group brand or our venue brands. It was a totally autonomous setup, and we believe that worked really well. And if you ever walk the growers precinct or enjoy a meal down there, you feel like you're totally detached from a club. You don't feel like there's not a TV in the room. There's no relationship with gaming. There's no relationship with smoking areas. There's no kids activity packs available. No branded advertising schooner glasses and things like that. So, you walk into that environment, you do feel like you're in a standalone venue. Prior to opening, we'd reached well over 1 million people with our marketing campaign, and we broke into some areas that, again, non-traditional club marketing areas, such as paid influencers. I learnt something new. I didn't know you could pay people to come to your venue and they took photos of themselves there, and how fantastic is that? But look, we had to sort of put aside some of our apprehensions in that regard and trust that, our launch team, which John and the team at Shoalhaven were a very big part of, and we made broadsheet, concrete playground, Sydney Morning Herald, good food, all those the foodie type areas that, again, the Sydney demographic were picking up on. We knew we'd get a local following, but a lot of it was about getting into Sydney and that day trip. Or that weekend away, here's your options. You're going to go and try Cupid's down at $1 on their wine. You're going to go to Greenwell Point at Jim Wild's, fantastic, world famous, fastest oyster shuckers in Australia. You're going to try them, but where can you go after you've been on the road to come and experience that produce? And we bring it all in together in that package. To date, I believe, looking at our marketing statistics, we've reached over 12 million people through our ongoing marketing. That's been amazing and been a huge part of it. So I guess one of the messages I'd like to be able to share and people to take out of today is that, think outside the square with your marketing as well, and really push into new areas that you haven't tried that are non-traditional. So I guess the best thing for us when we did hit those major foodie marketing platforms, that local media picked up on those and we didn't have to spend a cent. So the local paper ran 3 articles that were linked to the Good Food Guide. 450-seat restaurant opens in the Shoalhaven, and we were getting basically freebies in that regard as well. So I can also say that the Sebastians are regulars at our venue, given that they holiday locally, and Jules is quite regular on her Instagram, giving us a bit of a plug. And I learned as well that was actually an organic visit. They were approached to be a paid influencer. However, they never took that up, and they actually now pay to come to our venue by buying goods and services, which is great. And Guy uses the golf course and has brought friends down as well. And that's great to see. It's always popular. And Neil Whitaker, who was a paid influencer, shared his recent birthday event at the Growers and had a wonderful time. So again, they're not the type of people that in the demographic that would traditionally come to a club environment, but we're providing something that a much wider base of people are enjoying. I could go on all day talking about it, but it's a celebration of everything fresh, everything Shoalhaven, and giving people an opportunity to taste the local wares. And as I said, these things can be achieved, but you need to underpin them with a strong strategy and surrounding yourself with the right people. So I guess if that's a good enough summary there, Brad. That's what we've been doing.
Great, thanks, Bernie. I have a question for you from myself. With the influencers, it's heard and spoken about a lot now that that's the new way to market new offerings and venues and things like that. How did you go about looking into that? And was there an agency, or how did you go about that? And how could a club do the exact same thing as what you did?
Yeah, look, I think we used a number of marketing agencies through John and Scarlett and Luke's connections there through Tully Herd, they provided the strong a strong advisory to us and said this is what you need to do. So offhand, but I can provide a list of some the agencies that we did use. Sorry, it just eluded me for the time being. But look, it is definitely the modern trend, and Instagram is just huge. And again, it's basically a free platform. All you got to do is just sort of manage it, and why wouldn't you? And the followers through there is just crazy, and they love seeing pictures of cocktails. They love seeing pictures of fresh food, and people love seeing their celebrities, that they follow at these venues. And again, we're talking, Jules has got following in the hundreds of thousands, and Guy has got less, funnily enough. I think Jules might be a bit more active on the platform. Yeah, so just have faith in that. But you do need to hook up with these agencies that do have a really strong portfolio of influencers, and the right ones. You've got to have the right influencers to, you know, to work strongly with your brand.
Great, thank you. I'm happy for you to pay me to be an influencer. You know, come down and see the venue and put my photos up online. Don't have as many followers as Jules, but yeah, no, I can't wait to visit the venue sometime soon. Bring the family down. But yeah, thank you very much for your time and giving us a bit of a look into a unique offering that you have in the community. And yeah, very well done to you and the club.
Yeah, no, fantastic, Brad. Thanks again for the opportunity today, and yeah, happy to answer any further questions that anyone might have, whether it's online today or offline, most accessible. And love showing people around and talking about what we've done. Cheers.
Cheers, thank you. Now, our next presenter has been very busy and has been at the Hospitality Design Fair at the ICC Centre. So I know I appreciate your time today, Daniel. So I'd like to introduce Daniel Dickson from PHaT Sourcing.
Thank you, Brad. And Bernie, to you and the board, mate, congratulations. I think it's an amazing effort when a club decides to diverse outside the traditional club lines, and whether that be doing an area like you've got, or converting a bowling green, or taking in different communities. I think that's the 2.0 clubland for me. I think it's really, really important we move to those times. And Bernie, for the fact that you understand now organic growth versus paid growth, and all these things are fantastic. And cocktails and pizzas and beautiful food shots don't have a heartbeat, but neither does furniture. And we see the same thing. There's probably one of my most ordered chairs is a chair in the beach club in Hamilton Island. And they had quite a well-to-do person taking a photo on that. And I was actually had requests for that chair to be purchased. So I did tell them that we couldn't introduce them to the celebrity. But just because a person had been there and frequent a place like that, social media is just, it's where our clubs have got to go. And unfortunately, if you're not on that bus, you really need to move quickly. And Bernie's a great testament now. I think a regional area that's just had such success with engaging community probably leads me into my part. I was going to say is I'm not just going to touch on furniture, because I'm going to tell you some of the trends I've seen. I deal with a lot of clubs. We're very lucky that we do a lot of the clubs in Sydney, Victoria, and also Brisbane. Their furniture and gaming furniture as much as food and beverage. Everybody thinks clubs are just about the gaming revenue, and I know I'm preaching to the converted here. I think as club organisations, we need to be better at telling people how great we are for the community. And what I've noticed is some people have been, the first order of preference has been fixing up areas in their club that actually service some of their community sports or their organisations. So I've noticed that external areas, just not only from the COVID perspective, but a lot of enhancements being done from outside areas. The next thing is, how do we create an outside area? The old club approach was just a sea of furniture, the same chair from start to finish, left to right, front to back. What we're seeing now is a huge change in finishes. So we'll see some timber chairs, some aluminium chairs, some lounge chairs, all sort of nestled around areas that have been cornered and covered by, ironically, not structure. They've been planter boxes, or the back of booth seating, banquet seating, internal metal joinery separating spaces, which is all very soft furnishings and not difficult to do. No DAs. I found we've had a lot more internal joinery being done where we're separating areas. So there's drinking over there, there's food over there. And some of that has been because of areas of restriction. When places before just had an open slab people, they've now got that food service area is 86, this bar area is 68, and so on. We've done a lot of transitioning, utilising furniture on how we can move people around the club. And the great thing is that's generally the most cost effective. It's cheaper than walls, it's cheaper than moving structures. But I want to keep coming back to that point Bernie made before, is stepping away from the traditional club is sometimes very scary, often for the board who may have been there for a while as well. But I would encourage you to look at that. And I think interior designers and architects do an amazing thing. Sometimes the items that land in my showroom, I'm like, oh, that's going to be interesting. But by the time it gets on the floor with that carpet and that light and that location, it's just brilliant. A lot of the growers style places, there's the Grounds of Alexandria, the Greens in North Sydney there's the Fernrab in Mossman. A lot of these places have taken a leap of faith and have done really well from it. Don't get me wrong, it adds other complexities, which I'm sure Bernie would attest to, on changing people's mindsets. Schooner prices may increase. The wine offering may go with the food offering that's gone north as well. But you're also offering food experiences now. And where it might have been gaming experiences before or social experiences, some people are now going to clubs for food offerings. And with the food offering, you need to have the decor and the environment matching the. You can't go and sit at a buffet and get a $48 steak. Okay, so I think where we come into it, we've noticed a lot of people are up chipping, if I can use that word, up chipping their offering of pleasantries or the hospitality offerings to match what food they're putting in their venues. I'm really proud of that because I'm a bit of a foodie at heart. And I actually had a function a while back during COVID, actually, with 10 CEOs and Colin Fasenich. And Colin Fasenich, the Irish chef on MasterChef, he does many things now. What he was talking to these guys about is increasing their food awareness. So it's people not just doing the schnitzel. It might be the locally acquired chicken schnitzel, or as the growers would have been doing, their herbs and spices from the garden, their flowers garnished in their cocktails. That just keeps coming back to community. And I've done some work with some of those people in clubs doing small events, small focused events. They didn't do them before. So now they've engaged local businesses like the local wine grower or the local, they've had cheese evenings or whiskey tasting evenings in their venue with local businesses. I think it's fantastic. Some of those offerings are a neutral revenue for the business. So therefore you're just providing a meeting place, but they get to see your great offering and they start to use you as a frequent dinner venue or catch-up venue for drinks and so on. So I think we've always done traditional communities very well, the clubs have, and we've always given. I do like the fact that I'm seeing now events starting to come back, and not necessarily big auditorium events. Sometimes they are more boutique events. I saw the other day a two-course meal with wines to match, and it was by a local wine person who was bringing in their wines, and the chef had sort of married a meal towards that. That's great. It's promoting the food from the club, but also showing some of the local expertise in some of the areas of the winemakers around. I've actually been to one which was it was down in Tasmania. Actually, it was from local cheese providers. So they all bought there, and you had this massive cheese tasting. It was actually not at a club; it was at a function centre, but not dissimilar. Thinking outside the square, and not just. I hate discounting. Okay, so if anyone wants to talk about this, I can convince you very quickly. Discounting is the fast way to bankruptcy. Value doesn't come in discounting or offering $1 less for those chips or whatever it may be. It's about the experience they get there. So for us, we're not about having expensive furniture there. We're about having comfortable furniture. But if you've got an offering in your club where you've got, say, a great cheese tasting session, maybe married with some wines, just make sure that your decor is to the same offering then. I have found that, obviously, let's name the elephant in the room, is people are also concentrating on their mass revenue, such as gaming. And there's been some people who have increased their gaming furniture and gaming stools, which maybe in the past they haven't seen it. They just thought that will naturally come through. Well, I think now across the board, although the gaming revenue may have been healthy, people are also looking at their food and beverage offering and starting to spend some time and money on getting people in their business, not just for the traditional revenue that's been coming through. I love seeing, and there's always options, by the way. Don't worry about increasing your offering. Doesn't have to be increasing your costs. I think, to Bernie's point, he would have seen this when going through that process. A whole new area, you get a chance to start from a clean canvas. It doesn't have to just be expensive. You should really make sure you engage some consultants. We're always here to talk to you if you want some advice around offerings that are actually fitting your needs, your budget, and also your community. There is no point in putting in a beautiful high-end $400 timber chair when people are requiring armrests to get out of the chair, and when they sit there, they want to be comfortable. So I think thinking of your clientele and the offering that you're putting into your community is very, very important. And I will tell you a great little trick that I encourage a lot. If the budget's not there to increase your comfort in your areas, by refurbishing some of your more aged pieces often has a great lift for the floor. Bringing greenery into the floor, a few planter boxes and moving people around just has a nicer, lighter feeling when people come to your venue. So I think, and not dissimilar to Bernie, I'm very passionate about furniture and food, but I would say that the biggest trend I've seen in the last probably 18 months is people are starting to look at their venue not as a club, because at the core of it, you're always going to be a club. You're a members-based organisation where you're looking after the community, and whatever, if it's sporting organisations, RSLs, or whatever sub-branches you may have, you're always going to do that. But those people now have families. They have younger children. Their children have friends they want to meet places. Hence why, kids' play equipment sort of comes into some venues. Increasing food offerings is servicing that part that Bernie said, that 30s to sort of 45s. They are now going to clubs because the food and the beverage offering has been up-chipped, and the stigma attached to clubs, I believe, has definitely gone in a northerly direction. I'm very proud of that, because I think for so long we were seen as a buffet, and clubs just thought that I go there to your place and I'm going to get my $10 schnitzel. Well, that might have been cheaper than that. I just think now the options are there. I will say one thing. I think Michelle's going to touch on this. I will say one thing. I would always encourage you to be looking at your service quality. If you're up-chipping your food offering, your environment, your hospitality offering, make sure that the hospitality offering is following that same direction, and people feel like the customer service is a part of the whole journey. Mate, I'm happy to take questions, mate, but I could continue to talk all day about those things.
Can I just jump in and just amplify what Daniel said there about the customer service at the end? We don't rotate our club staff through growers. It's an entirely separate team that was engaged for a certain set of skills for that restaurant and that different experience. Not taking anything away from our club staff, they're fantastic and they're great jack of all trades, but it just required a different skill set to execute this project. So yeah, cheers.
Great. Yeah, well done, mate.
Good, great. Thank you, Daniel. Really appreciate your time today. I know you're a very busy man, but we really appreciate your expertise on that just now. Now we move on to our next presenter, and I'm sure you're all aware of who this person is. She's an industry expert, and when it comes to customer service excellence, she's in the know. It's Michelle Pascoe from Oops. So I'd like to welcome Michelle.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brad, and to the other panelists. And it's great following on from Daniel and Bernie, who are quite aware, as you would all be, that it is the service that is that key difference between you and the others in your community or even the broader community. As Bernie said, he just wasn't looking at his local community to be coming into the growers, but that regional area. And that's what I want to focus on today, is your people, because you are dealing with an intergenerational customer service base. Up to 6 generations now, from our pre-veterans through to our little alphas, those little young children, as Bernie has talked about, organic influences and paid influences. Oh my goodness, our alpha children are very strong influences on their parents and even grandparents. But it starts off with your internal customers, and that is your team. And as leaders on this webinar today, there is nothing more important than the values that you espouse as you walk through your venues, the people that you employ in your environment, that they are the right people. That's one thing that Bernie said. You know, it is working with strong strategies, but also hiring the right people in the right role. And perhaps that's something that you found. You know, through COVID, many of your team stepped up into roles that perhaps were not normally for them, whether it was painting walls or thinking of ideas and suggestions and actually executing ways to bring your members and guests back in. But there was also an opportunity for you to see, were the right people in the right roles for where you were wanting to go forward from here. And that's what I'd like to touch on briefly this morning or this afternoon, is that intersection, that the service intersection, discovering, you know, that zone of exceptional customer service of where you are now to where you want to be. And in many cases, it's not a giant leap. It's consistency is the big point. And its consistency is the one factor that I always find when I'm doing focus groups, which I've been doing a heck of a lot lately, which I love, that comes from, you know, your members and guests. It's that lack of consistency. So it's ensuring that your whole team are on board, that they know on what your values are but what the future journey is going to be. Because for many of you, when you came out of COVID, it was looking at that opportunity to rewrite things. And, you know, it perhaps was changing raffles and events and entertainment, as Daniel was saying, and even members draws. And for some, that was quite a big hiccup in the general way of life, your members and guests. Because to them, the safety zone was your club. And they knew when they came in, they turned left or they turned right, they would get that cold beer, they would have that machine, they would have that meal, and then, or they'd go into the members draw or be there for that promotion, and then things changed. Now, I know that some of you are perhaps bringing that back in or just looking at it and going, no, we're starting something totally new and fresh, like what Bernie's done at the Growers. I mean, that was a spectacular leap of faith, he and his board, in going, we're going to go through this no matter what was happening with COVID. And for many of you, you might be thinking of the same thing, but it's your frontline team that have to deliver what you and your management and your board's journey is going to be. Because you can send them 1,000 emails, SMS messages, have signage, and people just don't read them. I'm sure you would all agree with that. People will always ask you the same questions. Where's something or what's happening? You're going, seriously? It's just on the sign behind you. But of course you don't say that. But that's where your team have to have these conversations with them. And it's connecting people with their heart. And that's what the customer experience journey is all about. You can have these wonderful shining balls and beautiful menus and, you know, great wine lists, etc., and machines, but it's the people that make the difference. That is the key. There is nothing more than that. People will certainly, you know, as Bernie said at the Growers, he has a dedicated team. And it's not to take anything away from the others in his team, because I've worked with them and they're wonderful people. But when you have a dedicated team in areas that they know what they're doing, then they deliver an experience that is here all the time. So I want you to look at your team. Are they working well as a united team? How are you encouraging them? What is the information that you are giving them and allowing them to ask questions? So when they're on that front line and, you know, our members and guests may have a complaint or just a query about things, that they have the right information to give them. Because what our members and guests are looking for is that feeling of safety and security, that, you know, you are that extension to their living room. They, you know, as I said, I've just been doing some beautiful workshops with a very small bowling club, and it was just beautiful to hear that they know it's their club. And it's not that they had a right to make their point of view, it's they had a right because they love their club. That club was everything to them. Now, whether it's a small venue or a very large one, you know, and I work with so many of you, it is that deeper connection that you have with your each and every one of your members that makes them feel comfortable, that makes them know that when they come back to the club, that yes, it will be clean, that they do feel safe and secure, that you are looking out for them. And I know it's been hard, you know, it's been a real juggling act between the expectations, trying to have it consistent, and also all the changes. One week we've got masks on, next week we don't. One moment we've got the QR code, then we've got something else. And, you know, if everybody did the same thing all the time, it would be wonderful. But everybody's doing something slightly different. And that's where we get this little bit of agitation from our members and guests going, well, we haven't done it here, whether it's a shop or another venue. But that's where your frontline team are able to provide them that information, and they only get that information from you, the leader, the boss, the CEO, and your middle management team, in delivering that expectation that that frontline have to deliver to your members and guests. So how are you doing that? How are you communicating with them? How are you letting them know about what the journey is in front? Because the most critical part in that customer experience journey is your internal customers, so that they deliver that awesome experience. So there's a couple of little points here that I want you to have a think about is, let me just have a look at my notes. I should know all these off by heart. I've been delivering them for the last 30 years. What is your offer and your service? When does it happen? And why does it happen? And who is delivering it? So it's the what, the when, the why, and the who. Now, you know how to deliver it, but it's ensuring that consistency of that delivery is important. It's always knowing that you have to deliver on your promise. That's what retains your customers. It's exceeding their expectations. It's having connecting conversations with them and using concrete language and stories, therefore defeats that curse of knowledge. Now, that curse of knowledge is something that we all have in our head, and we at times don't always say it the way that people understand about the changes or new rules or why you're doing things, the connection now with the community, whatever it might be. It's that information that you give them has to be in concrete language. So the member and guest walks away thinking, I know exactly where this club is going, and my goodness, I'm so pleased that I'm a part of it. So as you as leaders and your frontline team, bring back the joy in your business. Help your team to be great teammates, because it's all about the customer service and that experience journey. That, I believe, truly differentiates between you and your competitors. Any questions at all?
No, not as yet. I'll keep the questions open. But thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate your time and imparting your knowledge onto us today. Customer service is very important to any business, especially clubs. But that's one thing that clubs do very well, is customer service, and having that point of difference in the community is club staff and being on the front line. And since COVID, they've shown that they've been very adaptive to everything that's been thrown at them. Like you said, masks, QR codes, they've adapted and they've done it very well. And clubs have really, shone in that time. So
certainly have. They really have been the shining light across all industries in ensuring that every customer, whether they're a long-term member or just a guest or the first time into a club, that they know when they come in that they're going to have that safe and security, and they the worries can pass them by and they can enjoy a lovely drink and a beautiful meal.
That's right. Thank you, Michelle. Now, our final presenter today has a wealth of knowledge in the digital space and is the digital marketing manager at Daily Press. So I'd like to welcome Zoe Go.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much, Brad, for having me on, and thanks to my panelists for speaking so much about influencer marketing. I could honestly take up the entire hour talking about influencer marketing, but I won't. I'm here to talk about effective social media marketing. So social media, I know a lot of people in the past have seen it as that thing that millennials spend all their time on, but at this point, everyone is on social media. A good 80% of Australians are reachable on social media, and it's something that everyone should be using to get your message out. So many people work so hard on all their clubs. They have so many great offerings, and it's just so important to get it out there in the most effective way possible. Oh, this is going. Great. So I have a couple of graphs here just to show you how effective social media can be. The first is from this year. It shows how digital marketing is trending upwards, whereas some of the more traditional marketing platforms are kind of trending downwards. People are starting to catch on that social media is extremely effective just because you can target exactly who you want to target on social media. It's also very, very cost effective because on a lot of platforms, you can only be charged when people click on an ad. So you're basically only being charged when people are interested in what you're selling, which can be very, very cost effective. The right graph shows you the average cost for 1,000 impressions on all these different platforms. And as you can see, social media is very, very low compared to something like direct mail. Because you can target exactly who sees your ads on social media. This is also extremely cost effective because on TV, you're kind of broadcasting it to everyone, whereas on social media, you can target women between a certain age and a certain radius who likes to drink wine on the weekends and has kids under 12. You can set that all up on social media. You can zone in on that target market, and you can only be charged when people click on that post to show interest. So we get a lot of questions at Daily Press, kind of what should I be posting? There are a few things that you can do. You can post pictures, you can post videos, you can post animations. Should I be taking it on my iPhone? Should I be getting things professionally done? And to be honest, the answer is it all depends on your audience. You are speaking to a certain audience with your social media. It is oftentimes the first impression that people get of your brand. And if you have a branding strategy done and you know exactly who your target audience is, you can kind of speak to them. And a lot of times on social media, it's a lot of testing, it's a lot of trying things out to see what people respond to. And oftentimes people respond to one thing 6 months ago, and then now it's completely different. But yeah, for the most part in the clubs industry, we've noticed that videos work very, very well just because it's a way to immerse people in the club. A lot of people have preconceptions about clubs. They don't know, they just don't get a good enough idea of what it's like to be in a club. So if you have a well-rounded video that shows that it might be different than what they previously thought, that could be really, really effective on social media. We also find that a really good professional picture that shows them exactly what you're offering and does a really good job of encompassing exactly what you're offering. So people can scroll past and kind of stop it and look and go, that actually looks really great. I'd love to go there. That's worked best in clubs. I have only been here for 4 months, but that's what I've seen so far. So this is another question we get a lot. What platform should I be using? There are so many social media platforms out there. If you really, really look, there's something for basically everything. The biggest one that is kind of a no-brainer is Facebook. Facebook is the social media platform that everyone is on. My grandma's on it. 80% of Australians are reachable through Facebook. And it has so much data on everyone. Everything you do on Facebook, they know exactly when you got married, how old your kids are, when you went to school, you kind of type that all in, you don't even think about it. Facebook gives you all that information and lets you target people through that. Sometimes you're on your timeline and you're scrolling and you look at an ad for 3 seconds instead of 2 seconds. Facebook knows that you read that ad. Facebook knows what you're interested in. It's very scary. It's very big brother, but Facebook gives you a wealth of information on your customers. So it's a very, very good platform for kind of zoning in and targeting the right people. Instagram is it's a brand under Facebook, so you can kind of get all the same information on Instagram as well. There are less people on Instagram and it's kind of younger skewing, but it's still very, very good, especially for clubs when you have offerings like food, beverages, things like that. We like to send very specific ads out at specific times, just so, you know, right before the lunch hour when people are starting to feel a bit hungry, they'll see some good food in their area, and that tends to be very, very effective. We get a lot of questions about TikTok, which is, I'm sure everyone's heard of it. It's a very growing, very young platform. And if you are aiming for that young demographic, it can be extremely, extremely good. A lot of hospitality venues, I know one of ours, El Camino, has seen massive results on TikTok just because it is one of the only platforms where things can really, really go viral like they could in 2012. And the ROI on it can be insane, but there is a strategy to it. It is a lot of work, and you will be mostly getting the attention of quite young people, which is not always in the club strategy. You don't always want, 18-year-olds coming to the club. We get questions about Twitter as well. We're not huge fans of Twitter for clubs just because we really like the imagery. We really like, we think clubs should be very visual with their advertising, and Twitter is just a one-liner, and there's not that many people on it, and it's not so relevant. The logo at the bottom is WeChat. So WeChat is something we've been using for clubs that have a high percentage of Asians that kind of come into the club. And a lot of people, I know my own mother, even though they've been in Australia for a good even 50 years, they still use their native platforms like WeChat, Weibo, things like that. And there is a huge, huge Asian community on WeChat. And there is a huge Australian Asian community on WeChat. So it can be extremely effective if you're trying to reach a certain demographic. And some clubs have started to use it, and they've seen great results if you're trying to reach that demographic. So there is really a social media platform for everyone, no matter who you're trying to target. And just back on influencers, with the Asian demographic, they call them KOLs, which is key opinion leaders. It's extremely effective. I'm sure you've seen sometimes outside restaurants, there are huge lines and people like to join that line and they're like, this must be good. It's a very similar thing on WeChat and honestly on other platforms as well. If people see something is popular, if people see someone they respect saying it's popular and they see a lot of people start to crowd around it, they also want to be a part of it. So I am a huge advocate for influencer marketing. I think it's very important to choose who your influencers are, because some influencers can be very expensive. We work with a lot in the sporting industry and even some from MasterChef, and they've been really good. It's just really important to kind of zone in on what you want, because sometimes even paying a 17-year-old millionaire to come into your restaurant, film a TikTok and leave, the ROI on that can be insane. You just really have to get your strategy down. So the final thing I want to touch on is data is key. So with social media, a lot of people see it as kind of like a surface level thing. Like I'm just putting it out there to get my name out and that's it. But social media can go so deep, and it should be a sales tool at the end of the day. You can put things out on social media, you can get brand awareness, that's all great. But at the end of the day, it has to have an ROI and it has to be a sales tool. So the way you can get those sales is through data. So social media, the platforms themselves give you quite a lot of data. They can tell you exactly when your customers are online. It can tell you exactly who your customers are. It can tell you exactly what your competitors are doing even. It gives you so much data. And if you tap into the Google market, you can see exactly what people are searching. You can see where the demand is. So you can kind of go in and fill that demand. The demand is already there. They just have to know you exist. So there's so much data out there that can kind of form your strategy, and it's very important. Obviously, of course, your club has a database and you should be looking at that, whether it's someone in-house doing it or a company like Indie. You should have someone looking at it and seeing where your demographics are, and you should be using that to form your strategy on social media, because you know exactly who is coming to your club, who responds to certain promotions, and you can actually put that list into social media, and Facebook will analyze those people with everything they know about them and find similar people to kind of drag them into the club as well. So yeah, data is key with social media, and social media should be used as a sales tool at the end of the day. Any questions?
I don't have any questions for you at the moment, but I'll ask you one. There's so many different platforms, as you mentioned. What is one of the best ones to use for clubs who may not be, a large scale club? What is the easiest one to get into, and what is the most effective one to use to reach their members? What would you recommend?
Definitely Facebook, just because everyone is on Facebook, and Facebook has ranges. You don't have to go as extreme as I mentioned. You can kind of just do a smaller scale thing. You can run campaigns that are as simple as just gender and age within your location, and you can do that. Facebook, it's just everyone is on Facebook. So Facebook is definitely the one to go for. And Instagram is linked to Facebook. So you can set it up so you can post your Facebook posts on Instagram as well. So if you weren't going to do any other social media, I'd definitely recommend Facebook or Instagram.
Okay. And my other question would be, how many hours or how much time would you recommend clubs should be spending on social media marketing?
Right, so it is all about that ROI. You obviously putting hours and hours and hours into social media is not worth it if you are not seeing any sort of ROI. So while I think it is important to have a presence just because everyone else has a presence, and it might be seen these days in certain markets as a red flag if you don't have a social media presence, they might be like, why are you missing from the internet? So I think while there should be a presence, if you are not seeing an ROI on it, yeah, you just kind of have to balance that out. So I think For a presence, you can kind of put a couple hours into it just to keep your page running. But if you want to go for a full strategy, you just have to get that ROI.
Okay, great. Thank you for a very informative presentation, and one I found very useful, and I'm sure everyone else has today as well. So thank you, Zoe, for your time. Just get you to unshare that screen. So today I'll finish up with our presenters' contact details. So if you need to touch base with any of them and ask any questions, their details are there. They're more than happy to answer any questions at any time on today's topic or anything further. I'd like to also thank all of our presenters for their time today. Really appreciate it. I'm sure everyone else does who joined us today. And on that, our webinar has been recorded, as I mentioned before, and it will be made available tomorrow morning through our EDM website and YouTube channel. So please pass that on to other departments so they can watch it when they can. But for now, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. And we always really appreciate the support for our In the Know webinars. And we hope to see you again in July for our next one. So thank you to our presenters.
Thanks,
and
Brad.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, guys.
See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.